Welcome back. I'm here again with Lyn Buchanan. Lyn, welcome back. It's good to see you as always.
Good to be
So,
back. Thank
so today we're going to answer some of the questions that have been posted on Reddit.
you. Okay.
And, with that, Lyn, I'm going to pull up the screen so that you can see the questions. Okay. Can you see that pretty well?
Yeah.
All right. So the first question is this is about remote viewing of the future.
Yeah. Because
All right. So
these
what?
okay. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Even the most proficient RVers often view the future differently from how it turns out. Absolutely. We have an analogy about this. There are several reasons for this. This analogy covers one of them. You get tasked by the police to tell where the criminal is going to be at 9 o'clock tonight so they can arrest him. And you say, okay, at 9 o'clock tonight, he's going to be at Joe's Bar and Grill eating dinner. So at 8:30, they go out and hide in the bushes. At 8:45, he walks up to the diner. They jump out and arrest him. And at 9 o'clock, he's in jail. You were wrong. Okay. If you had said he'll be in jail at 9 o'clock, they would not have gone out to Joe's Bar and Grill and he would be sitting there eating dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The fact is that you make a prediction. You predict the future as it stands at the moment you do the session. Then if somebody acts on it, it's going to change it. Right after 9/11, I was tasked to do a thing on the next terrorist attack on U.S. soil. I found a ship coming in and some sailors coming up in a small boat carrying some plant poisons, and they were going to just spray a crop just to sort of rub our nose in it, like you can't protect your entire border and all this, and we can come in anytime we want. And so I gave the time and the place and what to expect. They sent out agents. They evidently caught the guys as they came on shore and arrested them. And so that much of my thing was true. But I'd also predicted that they were going to spray these crops and kill the crops. Well, that never happened. Okay. We found that if you predict the future and somebody acts on it, it will change the future, making the viewer wrong. And in this case, hey, I'm very happy to be wrong. And the other thing is, just unknown, unpredictable changes, just random. Just like the weatherman will tell you what's going to happen with the weather next week. But every day he makes updates. And we have found that in predicting the future, one session doesn't do it. You keep making updates and your accuracy will go up. And your accuracy will often show that the closer you get to the event, the more you contradict what you've already found.
Mm-hmm. And
So,
what about distance from an event in time? So the farther out it is, my intuition would tell me it's much more difficult to predict because there's so many more random processes that can happen between you and the event that it can knock you way off course. Whereas if it's closer in time, it's easier. Is that accurate?
What you have found is that that's true up to a point. Beyond a point, it becomes more accurate again. And we have another analogy called the pond of time. You're a bug on the pond of time and you see another bug across the pond by a rock and you think that would be a good meal. And so you go skittering across the pond and you set up a wake in front of you. That wake makes the other bug fly away. And so it's not there when you get there. Okay. But the rock is. There are rocks in the pond of time and things that will not change, period. And what we've found is that the future is changeable up to one of those rocks, like the 9/11 situation. Okay. After that, from way back, you give me the date of, anytime following the 9/11 situation, and the information will be accurate again. And so, it's almost as though the accuracy rate wanders off, and then slap comes back again, But there are rocks in the pond of time.
And what would you characterize as a rock in time?
Things that will not change no matter what you do. The 9/11 event was one of them. There were ways to prevent it. It wasn't prevented. It was a rock. A comet coming through space going to hit the Earth. There's nothing you can do. You can make science fiction movies about how to stop it, but that didn't stop it. And, that's one of those things, events in time that is going to happen, period. So that's what we call the rocks in the pond of time. The other things, like the bug skittering across the pond, the minute you act on the future knowledge, you change it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything else to add on this particular question?
No, I think I pretty well beat that one to death.
I do too, but I just wanted to make sure that I did my due diligence on that.
Sorry about that.
Okay, now you're going to have to explain some context on this one, because I don't even know what he's talking about here, but I have a sense that I have a feeling you might. So he's asking about what causes the Earth's population die off that you've seen in the coming years.
I was tasked with assessing the future of the U.S. and
who tasked you with that?
A corporation. This is back in 1998.
Okay.
And what I found was, I dug out that session even, that in the year 2020, a series of man-made natural disasters was going to start happening that would last for about 20 years. And by the end of the 20 years, almost 75% of the population of the U.S. and generally the world would have been killed off. So a remnant of about 25%. And that after that, the governments would have to change, the economy would have to change everything. People would be more self-sufficient. Starting in 2020, I got that cities, schools, and things like that would start emptying out. People would start teaching their kids at home. Any communication between people would be through technological means and all that. And that it was a man-made natural disaster. And it was the start of a series of man-made natural disasters. Now, I don't know what's coming next, but I do know that Russia has earthquake weapons. We have weather weapons, plagues, diseases, viruses. Those are weaponized and being created in the laboratories, ostensibly for protection, but actually somebody's can use them for weapons. Yeah.
Now, is this a rock or a bug?
I did another session, this panic about December the 21st, 2012.
Oh, yeah.
Disaster and all this. I kept getting requests for what's going to happen. What I kept finding was nothing big or special was going to happen, but that it was a top of the hill type event, that we could prevent all this future that would be in 2020 if we did it before 2012. But after 2012, it was going to be downward, 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 picking up speed to the point where it becomes a rock in the pond of time. We can't stop it at this point. That session also had a tremendous number of genius children being born and a number of sickly children being born. It had the things that are going on today.
Now, when you said man-made disasters, is that connote intentional, or could it also be unintentional?
Both. For example, one of the Arab city-states, Emirates, have bought up land over the past couple of decades in Arizona, and also our own businessmen have taken and built farms, and there are actually armed guards around those farms, and they're pumping water out of the underground reservoir at the estimated rate of 3,000 gallons per hour, 24 hours a day. And suddenly the natural disaster of the mid-United States is going completely dry. You know, the weather changes and all that's causing natural disaster, but it's man-made.
Well, you can also, the most obvious thing that happened in 2020 obviously was the pandemic.
Yeah.
And look, I am more.
That was a laboratory virus.
Yeah, well, yeah, you just said it, right? But like, you couldn't say it. You couldn't say it right at the beginning. But it's, if you use Occam's razor, it's the simplest explanation, or not the simplest, but the most logical explanation. You have the only level 4 containment facility in all of China, in Wuhan. Within a block of that institute, the outbreak begins. All right. Yeah. And they blame it on a wet market. But in order to believe the wet market thesis, you have to believe that a bat bit a pangolin, and then a pangolin was eaten by a human, and it's somehow transmitted, which just doesn't, like, there's just too many things that you have to believe in order for that thesis to be true.
Isn't it a coincidence that a few blocks away, a virus cropped up that just happened to be the exact same virus that was being invented in the lab? Yeah.
Yeah, it was the novel coronavirus lab.
Yeah.
Right.
What a coincidence.
Well, I also asked myself, like, if that's the case, why wouldn't the U.S. government, be touting this thing? And it turns out it's because the NIH funded a company that funded the research, right?
Yeah.
It's just so it boggles my mind that, and then suddenly it's just, you were racist to even suggest the lab leak, theory.
Oh, I know it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So anyway, with that in mind, that is a man-made disaster.
Yeah. And
now I don't know how many millions it killed. It didn't kill, it probably killed 4 or 5 million worldwide.
But you've still got the COVID killing people. You've still got the long COVID and so on. Yeah. This is a man-made natural disaster. Yeah. A virus is a natural disaster. Yeah.
So what have you, anything else to elaborate more on? Did you kind of see different modes of what these things possibly could be?
One of the things that Session came up with was a change in warfare. Basically, the need for guns, tanks, weapons, and missiles and all that is going to start diminishing as people learn to use nature as a weapon. Like I said, we have weather weapons already. The Russians have earthquake weapons. In fact, there was an interview on Russian TV last year with one of the researchers and he was drunk as a skunk, and he was bragging about how they tested their earthquake weapons to cause Fukushima.
Wow.
And that program was quickly scrubbed. But I speak Russian, watch Russian TV, and I caught the broadcast, and it was quickly scrubbed. You can't find it anymore.
Interesting. What else did you see in that session? I mean, did you see anything that would have given you an idea of what could potentially cause this massive die-off?
Just, the series of man-made natural problems, weather changes, economic changes as a result of the natural changes. Also, the use of nature as a weapon, which I think is, according to that session, will become a growing situation where these things that can affect nature can be used as a weapon to flood places, earthquakes. If the Russians were to decide to use an earthquake weapon on La Palma Island, which is part of the Canary Islands, the volcano on the side that faces the U.S., a section is already split off that is 15 cubic kilometers of rock. If that thing slides into the sea, it will demolish Florida. It'll wipe out Florida. It'll wipe out the east coast of the U.S. up to an estimated 26 miles inland. And that is not a prediction from the remote viewing, those measurements. That's from the U.S. Geological Service.
And that would be not from a volcanic eruption. That would be from the resulting tsunami. Displacement from
They're saying that the thing will slide off if there's earthquakes and torrential rain soaking, because that whole thing is kind of porous. And, the volcano erupted several months ago, and it was a slow eruption. It was a natural eruption, but that further weakened that 15 cubic kilometers of rock. And so, a really good pinpointed earthquake on Canary Island could wipe out the eastern seaboard.
How does this alleged weapon work? Is it like a sound weapon? Is it acoustic?
I don't know. He was just bragging that they have it.
What's your probability of this happening?
The difference between genius and stupidity?
Not answering that question.
The answer is genius has its limits. Stupidity doesn't. And I've always had the prayer, Lord, deliver us from idiots in high places. He hasn't answered that prayer yet. And
no, it feels like it's getting a lot worse. I mean, it really is.
And I'm afraid that with increasing suspicion, my estimates of it actually happening are going up.
And then in the coming years, what does that mean? 2020 to 2040, 2020 to 2050?
2040. And what I got was that after 2040, the population is culled out. The remnant of people are demanding honest government, fair economic situations. They still live separated, and they still have the technology that they didn't have back in the 1800s. So communication with each other through technology is so much easier and becomes the standardized thing that interpersonal meetings and all that generally wind up being a thing of the past. Also, the IQ level of the general IQ level average goes very high. So, the remnant of the people are generally very high IQ, very demanding on honesty, freedom, and so on. And that for the next many, many decades, it's really Earth is really sort of the ideal place to live. That mankind as a unit is better off for this whole thing.
And what's driving that shift toward higher IQ? Just the people who survive are higher IQ, or because I imagine there's going to be a high degree of randomness too.
Yeah, that's another long story from a researcher that we met. And it is a long story, way too long for this thing. But it's a proven trend. Also, the number of epileptic children is rising too.
And how's that related?
It seems to be the opposite of the high IQ. Not meaning that they are low IQ, but the high IQ group of children that are being born today is 6 times the normal rate. And from what I hear, the number of epileptic children is also about 6 times the normal rate.
And how's being epileptic tied to any of that?
I don't think so.
But I mean, how's it related to 6 times the number of?
I think what it does is it just forms a dichotomy of what's going to be the general population when those kids grow up.
I see. All right. Anything else to add on this particular topic?
Not that I can think of.
Yeah, it's hard to get into detail when there's a lot of
Yeah.
hypotheticals.
I'm giving you some long answers for short questions. I apologize for that.
No, the audience loves it. Don't.
Okay.
There's no apologies for that. Oops, at me. Okay, I get this question all the time, and Morehouse answered it. I suggest I would be very surprised if you answered it any differently, but this is the psychedelics question. Using that to enhance remote viewing sessions, etc.
No. Experiments were done with that long before I got there. And by the time I got there, they showed that, even taking aspirin or something can have an effect on your remote viewing ability. Now, there was another study, though, not about remote viewing, but about learning. And that is that you do your best work when you're in the condition that you were in when you learned to do the work. So if you're an alcoholic, let's say, and you learn the remote viewing or any other skill while you're an alcoholic, you'll be best at that skill when you're drunk, and so on. And so how that plays into the effect of psychedelics or any other thing when it comes to the learning and performance of remote viewing, I don't know. I don't have the data on it, but they did show that psychedelics, medicines, anything like that that's out of the normal will adversely affect your remote viewing.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that at all,
Oh.
but the question keeps coming up.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. We actually talked about a little bit about this in the last episode, but Yeah, if you want to add anything to the, I mean, we could either start with the control panel discussion, but or just elaborate on it
Yeah.
in terms of how they
uh,
fly.
In 1812, I think it was, a UFO landed in North Japan, and this female inhabitant got out carrying a box around with her, and it's called the Itsurobune in Japan, which means an empty ship. The people were allowed into the ship. They found no motor, and yet this woman carried this box with her the entire time she was out of the ship. She got back in the box, into the ship, and the ship took off and all that.
Is this the box that they show like throughout various cultures, like the Aztecs and things like that, where they have this? It looks like a, I don't want to say satchel maybe, but it's just like it's got like a handle and it's just a box, but it's across various cultures.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to throw that in.
Ed Leeds Coleman in Florida, who built Coral Castle, was lifting 10 and 20 ton blocks of stone basically by himself. There are all these pictures of his workplace, and there's this box sitting up on top of one of the poles. And it's not part of a winch or anything like that. It's a box. And he could lift these 10-ton stones up with the, nobody ever knew how he could do it, but there was a box. I have done session after session after session that I call "What's in the Box."
What's in the box? What's in the box? Right.
And I've gotten descriptors.
For the uninitiated, that's a quote from the movie Seven.
Oh yeah,
right. Yeah. But sorry, go ahead.
And I have never been able to understand how it works, but I think that thing, I know the crashes at Roswell and Aztec and the other UFO crashes, they collect all of this debris, and I don't think they ever find a motor or a driving mechanism.
Do you get a sense that these craft are, in terms of the power source, anti-gravitic, electromagnetic, some form of power that we're not familiar with yet?
Yeah, that we're not familiar with. I think it has, now this is my analysis, this is my AOL, that it has a magnetic component. If they say, well, if they're so advanced, why do they keep crashing? If you have a flying mechanism that flies using magnetism, and out in space, you're doing fine, all that. You come to Earth, which is an iron core planet with hills and all that, with varying magnetic fields all over the place, and you fly low to the ground, you're going to crash. And so when people report seeing UFOs, they see it going very slowly, very slowly, very slowly, and then shoots straight up and then takes off. Okay. And so this leads me to deduce that part of the driving force is magnetic, because they're getting away from that irregular magnetic field of the iron core planet. Once they get away from it, then they take off.
Now, I have a person who watches the show who uses that as kind of evidence that they're not extraterrestrial. They're actually humans from, I don't know, Atlantis or Lemuria or whatever, some fallen civilization. Germans operating out of Schwabenland in Antarctica. Any comment on that?
Everybody has a theory, and they hang on to that theory like they're lost at sea and it's the only thing that floats. You come and rescue them from the theory, they cling onto it, they won't let go. Just like the guy at sea, a boat comes to rescue them, they're not going to let go of that log that floats. So it's all theory. I have the fact, and that is that I don't know. And that is a truth. I don't know. But I hear this theory and that theory. The Ancient Alien show came out not too long ago and said that if you take evolution up to this point and continue it on, we're going to wind up as grays with big head and skinny bodies and all that. And it's another theory.
Yeah, time travelers, future humans, right?
Yeah, whatever. The fact is, I don't care. They're here. That's what we've got to deal with.
Any other theories on how they fly? You said one component is, in your opinion, potentially magnetic. Any other components?
I think there has to be some kind of anti-gravity situation. Not sure I understand it or know what it is.
Yeah. Okay, and then I'm just going to throw in some. Are you familiar with Bob Lazar?
Yeah.
What's your opinion of that story?
Which one? Oh, you mean the Area 51 and the adjacent thing?
Yeah, S4 and the 9 craft, reverse engineering, et cetera, et cetera.
I tend to believe it. Yeah.
Okay, because he's the Element 115 guy, right? With the wave guide and the kind of wave guide in the center that is kind of the directional mechanism, and then he claims it's an anti-gravitic structure, and also some of the craft that he witnessed, according to the papers that he was given, which, as you well know, a lot of those things are seeded with some disinformation, just so that if there's a leak, they can pinpoint who leaked it, etc. So he wasn't sure, but one of the things that was in that literature was that there was some of these craft were recovered from archaeological digs.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, all right, anything more to add on this one?
Not really. I think there has to be some kind of an anti-gravity situation to it. But that, again, is a logical deduction. So,
yeah. I mean, a lot of what we're talking about is speculation. I think in this field, you just have to be open-minded. I'm not going to, I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah.
And even the most outlandish theories that I hear, I'm not going to completely laugh at, because sometimes they're right. Not often, but sometimes.
I know. Yeah.
Okay, so this is the remote influencing persuasion thing.
Yeah. Can you protect yourself from being remotely influenced? The answer for, let's say, 99.9999% of people is no. It's at the subconscious level, no. And if you don't believe that, just go into a store and see which products you buy. The subliminals are extremely powerful. They work on the subconscious mind, and there's no real defense against it. And so the mental influencing is exactly the same. There's no real influence no protection against it.
Other than just avoiding going into the store.
If you can do that, yeah. And you know what it is, the remote influencing, it happens without you knowing it. And so you don't protect yourself from it, even if there is protection.
Okay. And anything else to add on that one?
I believe all of us are influencing each other all the time. Well, sure. I can sense it when somebody is thinking or feeling intensely about me. Yeah, we do that. Everybody does it. Everybody has intuition. Yeah.
Okay. All right. This is again going back to some of those predictions. So this is the Deagle 2025 forecast. I'm just, rather than clicking on the link,
Yeah.
there's this forecast. Deagle was somebody who worked for the Rockefeller Foundation. He was a graduate of the U.S. Military Academy, served in Vietnam, worked in several U.S. administrations. I believe was a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, et cetera, et cetera. I guess he served under 3 presidents. He has this forecast that he put out before he died. I think he died in 2014. That shows a massive depopulation, not only of the United States, but all its allies. So you would see it in Europe, but not Russia, right? Belgium, et cetera. I think the US population right now is about 330 some million, dropping to 100 million. Let me just see what this says. Yeah, so this is just kind of related to that. I think your theory about that island in the Canary, or near the not island, but that terrain feature near the Canary Islands.
Yeah.
The
La Palma Island. Yeah.
La Palma Island, right? So it is an island. That'll probably net you 100 million right there if you take out the eastern seaboard.
But yeah. And the thing is, note the wording here. I only see a nuclear war causing that. Nuclear is really passe at this point. If you can get the weather to flood a country or starve a country, kill crops and all that, you don't need to nuke it.
Right.
You know?
Well, especially in your remote viewing session, you had a continuation of global communications, right? In a nuclear war, that would not be the case.
Yeah.
Because of the EMP impact, all that stuff. So,
yeah.
Anything else to add on this one? I think this is more of a comment than anything else.
No, that I know of.
Here we go. Now they're looking for safe spots.
Yeah.
Is there a reason you live in New Mexico now?
Yeah. When I retired, I wanted to live in Cloudcroft. We moved here and found out that Cloudcroft at the time didn't have computer stores or internet. And I thought, how can the natives possibly live here? And so we started looking around all over the place. And my wife said, I like Alamogordo. Let's live there. And I said, I remembered Alamogordo from when I was a kid as a dirty spot on the highway. And I'm not living in Alamogordo. And she said, I like Alamogordo. We've lived here for 25 years now. Happy wife, happy life. And
that's so
right. That's how we came to live here. But yeah, New Mexico is sort of a safe spot in many ways. You're not going to have a tsunami here. You're not going to have a lack of electricity here. We get 320 days a year of sunshine. I run everything on solar power. We're completely on solar power. We've got our own well. We do hook up with natural gas right now, but we're slowly replacing everything with electric, and we'll be totally off the grid. I'm not a hardcore prepper by any means, but we're packing away food. Yeah, we're I'm a just in caser.
mm-hmm.
Not a prepper, but just in case, because I don't see good times coming. I really don't.
So you would call New Mexico a safe spot?
Yeah, it's stable land. there's no real earthquakes here that is predicted to change once the aquifer below the Midwest dries out. They're expecting some, earthquakes of some kind over the next couple of decades. But this is very stable land. I have recently bought a 122-acre ranch that I'm turning into a remote viewing training place. And it's out right on the edge of White Sands Missile Range. It's in a no-fly zone. You go out there at night. It's 5 miles from the nearest small, dinky little town, which is a small oasis town there in the desert. And you can see stars all the way down to the horizon. I have never in my lifetime been able to see that before. But the nights are so clear. It's so quiet out there. One of the people I took out to help oversee the ranch, he made a very good observation. He said, it's so quiet, you can hear it. You can hear the silence. And it's very true. The silence becomes the thing that you can actually hear the silence of it. Fantastic place for training. We'll be using it for training and retreats, conferences, and things like that. We have a GoFundMe right now. If you want to see a quick view of what the ranch looks like right now, remoteviewranch.com.
I'll put that in the, Lyn, if you just send me an email after this with the link, okay. I'll put the link in the description so that folks can click on that and see the ranch. Incidentally, how many remote viewers do you typically train a year?
Generally around 50. I try to keep the classes small. Now that I'm training online, the classes are bigger. Mm-hmm. When I was training in my home, I always kept it to 3 or 6 people. But now, whoever signs up for the class goes through the classes online. My basic course is stages 1, 2, and 3, and that has 160 plus videos. And we have a webinar, in-person webinar every 2 weeks. The intermediate course now has a little bit over 140 videos. And we have, on the intervening weeks, we have webinars for the intermediate course. I'm working on the advanced course, the medical applications course, the monitors course, the database course, the analyst course, project managers courses, and all this. So by the time I finish, it's looking like it's going to be about 1,500 videos.
And do you have a separate link for that as well, for those courses?
I have to my website, and those a link to the courses. The courses are on the Kajabi platform. Which,
okay, I'm familiar with that. Yeah,
I think it's the best platform there is.
It is for digital courses. It's a phenomenal platform.
Absolutely, yeah. And so the links to the courses for some pre-sign-up videos, and to sign up with the Kajabi course, they're on my website, which is crviewer.com.
And that'll also be in the link below.
Okay, good.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so next question. This is related to the time question that we had earlier. So if the future can be remote viewed, how deterministic is the universe? How do you think time works? We talked about the rock and the bug and all that stuff, but is there anything else you want to add to this?
First of all, everything you've ever learned about time, scratch it. It's not true. The future can be remote viewed. How deterministic is the universe? Like I say, there are certain rocks in the pond of time. Between those rocks, we seem to have free will. So the whole question about I forget which church it is. It says predestination,
Calvinists, right?
Calvinist, and free will. They both exist side by side. There are things that are going to happen.
So this is like in near-death experiences, the destiny versus free will sort of things. Like there's certain things that are they're gonna happen to you no matter what. If you believe all this, again, I'm just throwing out theories. And then there's
like they say, life is a chess game with God. You can play any way you want and make some smart moves. He's going to win the game. Yeah. And the other analogy along that way is that life is a race with death. And you can run as hard as you want and be in whatever shape you want. But the finish line is 6 feet underground. So there are some things that are destined. But between then and now, you have free will. Yeah.
And it's all how you respond to it, too.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not necessarily what happens. It's just how you respond to it. Okay. Oh, this is a great question. I forgot about this one. You see this? So is there a target that you wanted to be tasked with? Actually, it's multiple questions, but the first one is there a target that you always wanted to be tasked with, but you never received?
Yes. And I've never received it, but I've given it to myself, and that is what's in the box.
So what is in the box?
I don't know. I wish I could figure it out. I get descriptors of it, and I can't figure out what it does or how it works or anything like that. It's some technology that's beyond my understanding.
So what descriptors do you get?
That it's part of it is in parallel lines on a base of some strange solid material, and that the solid material is in layers. And some of these are rare earth layers. Some of them are just like gold, silver, plain straight elements and all that. What it does and how it works and how it can make something fly, I have no idea, whatever.
It sounds like a semiconductor built on top of a superconductor.
Seems like it, yeah. Have I ever been tasked with doing my own past or future incarnations? I've done that on my own too. And I did that.
So there's a lot to unpack. There's a lot to unpack there. So let me step all the way back. So based on your understanding of reality and based on your experiences, is this question even within the realm of possibility, i.e., do you believe that we all have past and future incarnations?
I don't.
Okay.
In fact, I was tasked with this one time with, it wound up about 64 different taskings. What's on the other side of death? These were blind sessions. I didn't know that that's what the target was. As a control mechanism, they had me describe the person at a specific time. What I didn't know was it was right before they died. And then move forward 1 hour in time. Now describe the person. I never found a ghost, but only had like 64 different trials. So I don't know. I found that some people go to what I would call heaven.
Mm-hmm.
Some people go to what, for me, would be absolute hell, not as places, but as situations for the soul afterwards. Some get reincarnated, and some just quit existing. Period.
That's horrifying.
And so, I've come to believe that all of these are possible and probable. I did some follow-up studies once I got feedback on the people, and it didn't seem that their religious beliefs or whatever was what determined whether they go to heaven or hell or get reincarnated or quit existing. So I don't know about that. I just found 4 categories of what happens after death. And, you know, one church will say, no, here's what happens. Everybody else is wrong. Agnostics will say, you know, here's what happens. Everybody else is wrong. Everybody's wrong in thinking that theirs is the only way.
Mm-hmm. Did you find any correlation between the way the person lived their life and what the outcome was, or did it appear to be completely random?
I really didn't. Of course, what you have is the reports of how the person lived. So, you know, whether they had a secret life and secret sins and all that, I have no idea.
Right.
You know.
And how would you describe like the cease to exist? They just wink out, gone?
Yeah, they were just gone.
What about what you saw as a conception of of hell?
It was a place of absolute darkness and horror. And usually when I got one of those, I would wind up having nightmares for weeks afterwards. Just an instantaneous thing that just closed the session down and made me just recoil. And I would start having nightmares and all that. So absolute total horror. Ones that I would call heaven was just different people would wind up in places where they were just happy as they could be. Some with loved ones, some not with loved ones, and so on. As far as the reincarnation, almost every one of them I found reincarnated into a young child of about 12 or 13 years old.
Say more.
Not as a baby.
Yeah, say more. How does that work?
Well, the only thing I know is that most cultures have that coming of age thing, you know, around 12 or 13 years old, where now you're a real person. And each one of these that I found that reincarnated did reincarnate into preteen child. Now, there are stories, of course, of babies being born who, you know, at age of 1 or 2 or 5 or something like that, recount past life stories. So, like I say, I had a small sampling. I didn't have hundreds of these sessions.
Anything about it that disturbed you? I mean, hell, you kind of explained that, but
yeah, not really. Well, yeah, winking out of existence, period.
Yeah, that's almost more disturbing.
Yeah.
Did you get the sense that these outcomes were imposed by an external authority or imposed by the entity itself, the person's soul itself?
I have no idea. I was remote viewing, so I was reporting I was describing what I saw.
Okay. All right. That's,
yeah.
We probably go on and on for hours about this. Is there anything else we should add before we go to the next question?
Well, not that I can think of. It became very real to me once I found, you know, got the feedback. The 4 possibilities are there. Like I say, in that sampling, I never saw a ghost. So, but it was a small sampling.
Yeah, I've heard interesting theories on what poltergeist may or may not be, but one of the more interesting ones is that from a quantum mechanical perspective, we're all vibrating at a certain frequency all the way down to the atoms and things like that. And time is really a human artifice. So what's happening is everything is happening simultaneously at all points in space and time. And a ghost is just, for some reason, that resonant frequency where that person is living their life, which may have been in the past, somehow intersects with your reality, and you're just getting echoes of a live person essentially. But again, it's a theory. I don't know where it came from. I don't know where the theory is, but it's a theory. I don't.
Yeah. And one
And
theory is another. Yeah.
yeah. So, and again, that just gets ascribed to ghost. The other thing, particularly with poltergeist activity, probably comes very close to home for you, is it's not ghost, it's you,
Yeah.
right?
It's
With the
yeah.
with the light bulbs and things like that, right? For
Yeah.
psychokinetic.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So next question. What do you think would be the most valuable target for remote viewers to work on, aiming towards providing value to humanity as a whole?
Humanity as a whole, I think they should focus on a single problem and remote view to find out what the solution of it is. When they get that, tackle another problem. This was from a remote viewing session. I didn't do it, but someone else did. They said the rising price of gas, okay? The thing came about having a gas out day. Nobody buys gas. Okay, the next day they go in, they buy the gas. The oil companies and all that, they didn't lose anything. And so this one person worked on a solution to the problem. And he came up with, take the top oil company and boycott that company. They will either quit producing gas for cars and, as fuel, or they will come down on their price. When they come down on their price, the other companies are going to have to match it. Okay. So then go after the second largest company. And the prices keep coming down as you pick them off one by one by one. All of a sudden,
Price goes up.
Yeah. And it's logical, but that's what the guy found in remote viewing. Yeah.
Yeah. The laws of supply and demand. Adam Smith is rarely wrong.
Yeah. The thing is, the remote viewing does not have to be used for woo-woo or ethereal stuff, or even, what's on the planet Scooby-Doo somewhere out in time and space. It has actual practical applications. Tell me where to find the missing child. Tell me, I'm on the parking lot. Which one of these cars should I, in the car lot? Which one of these cars is the limit and which one should I buy? Practical reasons for the remote viewing.
Now, going back to the question about death, dying, anything to add about that in the transition? Did you see anything in the transition when somebody died? Common
really
characteristics?
Because the monitor always moved me an hour ahead. And so instead of moving me slowly through the process, they would get me at one point before death, move me to after death. And what's the difference, or what's...
Well, then there's the question of what's 1 hour in that realm versus what's 1 hour in the physical world too, right?
Yeah, I really have no idea on that. Yeah.
Okay. I think we got all the questions.
By the way, I didn't kill a goat. I killed the computers. The sergeant who did kill the goat did go through the death experience, and it really had a very bad effect on him. Yeah, really affected him emotionally.
Oh, really? Can you say more about that?
No, just that from what I hear, he never really got over it, and it changed his life, changed his attitude toward life, everything else. He never did anything like that again, as far as I know.
Oh, so it actually had a negative. It worsened his outlook on reality.
No, it worsened it. It made him more serious about it. And also about what he had done to that goat.
Interesting. Can you say more? I mean, like, for instance, is killing the goat using his ability worse than just taking a knife to its throat?
Probably not. I know how I couldn't take a knife to its throat, you know. The thing is, though, the goats in that experiment were goats that were being used by the medical training. And what they would do is they had these poor goats. They would shoot them in the leg and then have medical trainees patch them up and all that. And they were doing horrible things to these goats just so that the medical people could practice operating on them, practice, you know, all the different healing methods and all that. Because, you know, very few soldiers die of natural means. There are healthy people that bad things happen to.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were using these goats, just like sometimes they use the chimpanzees and all that for medical experiments. And I would imagine that by the time that goat died, it was ready to die. That it, you know, it was probably wanting to die. Because, you know, living your whole life in a cage, getting shot every now and then, getting operations that don't need to be done and all this, that's got to be a life that you don't want to keep living, you know. So I would imagine that it was a relief for the goat.
And that's kind of what he saw in that.
No, I don't think so. No.
What do you think he saw that
I think he
upset
saw
him?
a living creature that he killed.
Interesting. All right. Another question that is not on here, but I've seen you talk about this on a prior podcast of sorts. I think you talked about the abilities that humans have, particularly with remote viewing, to see across space and time, and extraterrestrial races that we've had contact with. Some that are psychic, some that are, it's like a matrix. You have psychic ability, no psychic ability, friendly, hostile. Can you talk a little bit about that that 2x2 matrix?
The thing is, it's abilities that everybody has. The controlled remote viewing that Ingo Swann developed simply lets you communicate with your subconscious, which has all of these abilities to some degree, varying degrees for different people. And so, like when you get into stage 6, one of the columns of information that is in the Ingo Swann process lets you go out and do dowsing, come back and write the report, write the results into that report so that it becomes a formal report. You can go out and do scrying. Shoot, if you wanted, you could cast bones or gut chickens or read entrails or, you know, dance naked in the moonlight or whatever, and come back and report. And the Ingo Swann method at that point opens up to every other field of psychic endeavor and uses that as a tool to find information and come back and report it in a standardized reporting method. And so the protocol for the Ingo Swann method is not only structured by human psychology, also martial arts, but it also organizes your session. It gives you control over your remote viewing. Many people say, oh, you're a controlled remote viewer. That's a misnomer. You're a remote viewer. Controlled remote viewing means the viewing is under your control. And so you're a remote viewer who has control over the remote viewing. That's why it's called controlled remote viewing. And so all of these methods they all come in from the same place. They're all effective to some degree. And
it's just more of like a tool to focus your mind.
it really is. Yeah, that's it. That's why anybody can learn it.
And that's why we should not always discount things that are off the beaten path sometimes, like not remote viewing, but we're talking about just throwing things like palm reading, things like that. There's going to be a lot of charlatans, but for some people, it's a method of focusing, or a Ouija board, or something like that.
The beaten path was beaten to get away from all those things, and those things are real and they're there. Yeah, but somebody who wants to ignore those stays on the beaten path. Yeah.
Now, what about this matrix though, with the friendly, hostile, ETs, psychic, non-psychic?
Okay, I was tasked. This was after the service. After I got out of service, I was tasked to do an assessment comparing and contrasting ET involvement, psychic ability, with human psychic ability. And I was given access to things that will never see the light of public illumination, of abduction events, abduction experiences, and all that. Over the whole period of time, I managed to categorize. This was my categorization.
Mm-hmm.
They tend to fall into 4 fields. 1, friendly, an enemy, those 2 fields. And in each one of those fields, more psychic than we are, or equal or less psychic than we are. And so you could divide them up into one field, those aliens into another field, those aliens into another field, and all that. And the non-psychic friendly ones come here for trade. And I know this, I've gotten feedback on this from my friend who is, in charge of the technology transfer. Those who don't like us come here by accident, if they come here at all. They stay away. That are less psychic than we are. The ones who are more psychic than we are and friendly generally want to help us develop our psychic ability. The ones who are against us, enemies, and more psychic than we are, they want us wiped off the earth. They just want to get rid of us, period. And I couldn't understand the motivations of those 2 last groups. There was this one incident, documentation of an incident that I finally got that sort of made me develop a theory that I still hold. There were these 3 guys camping out near a lake. They saw a UFO coming toward them. They're standing there. It got right over them and they froze and they were abducted. And what dawned on me from this was that the ET psychic ability may be stronger than ours, but they don't have any range. They have to be right over you. They have to be at you to do their psychic work. With remote viewing and with human psychic ability, we have weak psychic ability, but our range goes across all of space and time. And so once we get out into space, and if we have strengthened our psychic ability by the time we get out into space, we're going to be a pretty strong force in space. And that's why those friends want to help us do it. And our enemies, they don't want us out there, and they don't want us learning these abilities. And those are the 4 categories that came up in all of the many and all of the documentation that I was given.
And why hasn't this unfriendly group wiped us out?
I think they've tried many times. We have space weapons now. In fact, many people have, if you watch Ancient Aliens and things like that, they've actually seen photographs of the space weapons firing. There's this one where it's out, the astronauts have taken it out the window, and there's this thing that comes, and all of a sudden, zoom, and the thing turns around.
Yeah, it shoots back out. Yeah, I've seen that.
We've got the space weapons. And what I would like to know, and can't find out information about, how do we identify friend or foe? With airplanes, every airplane that flies on Earth has a little unit called the IFF, identification friend or foe. How do we tell, like an incoming UFO, how do we know whether it's friend or foe? I don't know that. But
and
how do we shoot across the bow? Yeah.
Do you have a sense for the unfriendly ETs, what they might look like or be like? I think the friendly ETs, you kind of had an experience.
Yeah.
That sounded friendly.
Like I say, they're just people to me with different types of bodies and all. And the ones that I have been tasked to observe and all that are the ones on Earth who are friendly. Those on other planets, I just observe and describe. That's it. I don't get involved.
All right. Any last advice or things you want to leave the audience with?
Well, when it comes to the future, get self-sufficient. Y2K. Oh, if the computers go out, then everything's going to go to crap and, we're all going to die. And if that had happened, yeah, a large number of people would die because the infrastructure would fall. If you don't depend on the infrastructure for your survival, then you're better off. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, survive. Let your family survive.
All right. With that, thank you very much, Lyn. It was a pleasure, and it was very illuminating. I'm sure that people will love this episode. Okay. And then, all three of them. And I haven't even asked, but if you're finding the audience is finding value in this, please subscribe to the channel, and then I can keep making more videos like this. So thank you again, Lyn.
Thank you very much.
If you enjoyed this video, hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.